Hello and welcome once again to a Chucky series review. I have not done this for a very, very long time. Over a year, in fact. Maybe even 2 years. Oh dear. What have I been doing? Well, if you've seen the other videos then you know I've been doing other things, and obviously there's also such a thing called personal life, which gets in the way of doing videos. But nonetheless, Bride of Chucky is the next installment in the Chucky series franchise. Now, unlike my other reviews where I decided to basically do it scripted, which was a bad idea, whereby I just had a bunch of flashy images of the movie and I moaned about the movie or praised the movie, I'm going to do what I usually do, the same thing which I do with my Simpsons reviews, same thing that I do with all my reviews in fact, sit in front of a camera and bitch about a film. And in this case it's Bride of Chucky, the first of the three comedy horror films in the Chucky franchise. And before I even talk about Bride of Chucky, I'm going to talk about what led up to Bride of Chucky. So, where we last left off, in Child's Play 3, it was a major flop. No one really liked it. It was a critical and commercial flop. I believe it still has the lowest rating out of all the Chucky films, even lower than Seed of Chucky, which is a lot. And not only that, as you may remember from my previous review, there were a lot of murders that occurred, and Child's Play 3 was the scapegoat for these murders. One involved a woman being tortured with the "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play," and the other was the Bulger case, which is very infamous in Britain. As a result, Chucky's reputation was decimated completely. It got banned in the UK temporarily, and essentially the film series just stopped completely. It's what I like to call the first Chucky crash, because everything just stopped. Chucky was no more, and it remained so for a very long time. That was until the late 90s, where Chucky all of a sudden made a big comeback, and instead of being, the scary doll, he became more comedic, more out there. There's Saturday Night Live sketches with Chucky. There's a wrestling or WrestleMania joke with Chucky as well. Basically, Chucky became a lot more, how do I put it, out there, a lot more, I don't want to say sociable or, goofy, but a little bit more characteristic, I guess. I guess you could say charming. It became a lot more of an icon, and it was around the same time in the 90s where horror movie icons were being turned into not necessarily horror-based horror movies or slasher films, but more light-hearted or a lot more comedic, a lot more goofier, I guess you could say, a lot more over the top. And Chucky is a prime example of the time, not only visually but also, well, we'll see in Bride of Chucky, won't we? It became a lot more light-hearted, I guess you could say. And it worked. It worked very well, because Chucky had basically been dead and the crash happened. But now Chucky was back again. The ban in the UK, I believe, was lifted, and it was no longer the scapegoat. It was no longer this horrible movie. It was now, something that everyone wanted to see. And Bride of Chucky, not only was it, I believe, released on the 10th anniversary, 1998, of the first film of the Chucky franchise, but it was also to symbolise a lot of things. It was also to symbolise that, Chucky has evolved now. It's no longer going to be the same sort of generic storyline of him tracking down Andy and trying to transfer his soul into Andy. It was no longer going to be like that. It's going to have new adventures. It was going to be a lot more broader. The world was going to be a lot more expanded, I guess you could argue, instead of just being more or less isolated in one area and that's it. And it was to make Chucky a bit more mainstream. And it worked very well. the film was a success when it was released. A lot of people praised it, although at the same time people were a little bit iffy over the fact that it's changed from being a horror film to being comedy horror. But then, if you rethink about it, Chucky was dead, and the only way to bring him back was to bring him back as explosive and as over the top as possible, and that's what Bride of Chucky does. But something that I always find interesting about Bride of Chucky is the behind the scenes of the film. So, not only was it meant to broaden the horizon, not only was it to like almost parody the Chucky series up to this point, you know, it was also it also had some trouble behind the scenes. I don't remember her name, but the actress that plays Jade was apparently a diva, and she did not get on with Don Mancini or anyone on set. She didn't get on with the person who plays her boyfriend in the film, Jesse, at all. They hated each other, supposedly, and she, like, I believe she really, she didn't want to, like, waste more than 6 hours on set. She was like, she wanted to get over and done with it, go. She was, like I said, I don't remember the actress's name. Really awful when it comes to names, but the one that plays Jade, as I repeat, she just didn't get on with people, and supposedly the set or the behind the scenes of her being annoying and diva-ish bitch was not pleasant, to say the very least. But from what I can gather, aside from her and maybe a few other actors and actresses, I think Jesse's actor was also a bit of a pain in the ass on set, everyone was enjoying themselves, and you can always tell in this film that people have enjoyed making it, because it's just, let's just talk about the film now, shall we? Let's just talk about the film. So I guess it's set in modern day, or I guess you could argue it's a year later, because Child's Play 3 was set 10 years later. Not 10 years later. 8 years later. 8 years later. Or 7 years later. So, regardless, Child's Play 3 was set, you know, ahead of when it was released. And thus, we're actually back in real time now. So we're actually in 1998. And Chucky's corpse or bits have been taken out of a closet, storage closet evidence, along with other like horror movie icons and memorabilia, which I think is pretty funny. It's taken out by a police officer, and he's killed off by a woman who turns out to be Chucky's ex-girlfriend, or girlfriend, because they never really broke up technically. He just got shot in a toy store. Tiffany decides she's going to stitch Chucky back up, hence why he's got all these scars and all these stitches now. He is brought back to life by Tiffany, and of course Tiffany hopes that they'll live happily ever after, like boyfriend, girlfriend. Now they can be husband and wife, because he left a ring and she thinks it's for her. Turns out it was actually from Vivian Van Velt, I believe her name was, who he murdered and stole the ring off. And he doesn't actually have any interest in Tiffany whatsoever. Tiffany is upset, so she locks him up. Chucky obviously escapes and kills Tiffany, not before transferring her soul into a doll, torturing her just the same as he is tortured in his doll body. Of course, meanwhile, you have two young lovers, Jesse and Jade. Jade is under the oppression of her uncle because her parents died, and her uncle is forbidding her from seeing this ruffian Jesse because he's this poor, working class individual who lives in a trailer park, and you're some middle class, upper class individual, you know, blah blah blah. And he really hates Jesse because he's also, I believe, got a criminal record as well, which is, you know, a no-go for someone who is a chief, I believe. I would say I believe he is a chief of police, and thus the two want to run away together. Tiffany gives this opportunity because Tiffany and Chucky have a debate with each other about how they can get out these doll bodies. And it's basically Tiffany, Chucky I meant, he talks about the heart of Dambula, which, or the fucking hell, I forgot his name. Oh dear. Amulet, the hard dambula. It's an amulet. And it's the only way to transfer one's soul into another body without it being, presumably the first person you see. I will talk about the hard dambula in a second, because that is, in my opinion, a glaring plot hole and something that is pretty stupid when you really think about it, but I digress. So Tiffany decides she's going to trick Jesse and Jade by saying, oh, if you go to this location, i.e. where Charles Lee Ray has been buried, then I will, and deliver these dolls, I should say, and deliver these dolls, I'll pay you $1,000, and you can live happily ever after, blah blah blah, something like that. And so Tiffany and Chucky, of course, their plan is to literally just transfer their souls into the young couple. Simple enough plan. Of course, using the hard dambula, which is still attached to Charles Lee Ray's corpse, which they need to dig up and ensure that what the fuck am I saying? Ensure that they can transfer their souls and live happily ever after, basically, and be human again. Of course, it turns into a bit of a road trip. Chucky and Tiffany are hiding in this van while Jesse and Jade are going around the country to go to this one location. But as they do, they're tracked down by Needle Nose, a corrupt cop, I should say, who's being paid by the uncle. The uncle, of course, is also one of those to stop Jesse and Jade in their track. They're not only that, there's con artists, there's druggies. This is just a chaotic road trip, and obviously Chucky and Tiffany are cleaning up the mess, if you know what I mean, killing off all these people one by one. But as a result, police are believing that Jesse and Jade are Bonnie and Clyde, basically. Two murderers going out and killing random people because these bodies are being found. And of course, Chucky and Tiffany are forced to reveal themselves at one point, by which they take the two hostage and they drive all the way to the graveyard where Charles Lee Ray is buried. Charles Lee Ray, of course, is being dug up because they've discovered some evidence of him on some of the murder scenes, crime scenes, I should say, which is very peculiar, to say the very least. So digging him up already, so that helps Chucky and Tiffany very easily. But one thing that doesn't help is the tension between the two. Chucky is a very masculine man. He's a very chauvinistic individual, while Tiffany, she's a feminist, basically. So you put these two together, it's not going to end well. And Jesse and Jade both understand this, so they turn the two dolls against each other, and they essentially end up trying to kill one another. Chucky eventually does succeed in killing Tiffany after a little fight, and he then uses a hard dambula, hoping that he can transfer his soul. But he is kicked into the shallow grave. He cannot escape and is eventually shot dead. The detective who witnesses all this decides to free Jesse and Jade, saying that they died, although they're actually alive, so they can live off happily ever after, and Chucky and Tiffany are dead once and for all. Or so we think, because as a detective studies the doll bodies, Tiffany starts to scream, and out comes this spawn, a thing that jumps out and latches against the detective's neck, and it ends just like that. So, that is a brief summary of Bride of Chucky. So, I might as well get the negatives out of the way first. I know a lot of people really don't like the comedy horror aspect, and sure, that is quite a glaring... It's quite glaring because, Chucky has always been horror-based for the first three films, and now all of a sudden it's comedy horror. Although, I'd argue it sort of makes sense in the sense that it parodies the Chucky franchise, and the Chucky franchise in itself is technically a parody franchise. Don Mancini has even admitted this because it's based on consumerism and toys in general, buying the latest toy, and how greedy these companies are. They don't care if a child dies or something, or a child is involved in some murder because they say their dolly has done it, or something like that. It's all about money, and of course we see this in the first, well, we see this in the second and third film, you know, the big greedy corporations of good guys are obsessively, you know, just handing out money or creating new dolls even though the reputation is not so positive. So, Chucky. So, in Bride of Chucky, one of the things that really is a glaring issue for me, personally, has to be the Heart Dambula. Now, if you've seen the other Chucky films, you'll know straight away that Chucky has always been able to transfer his soul as long as it's the first person that sees him. So, in other words, Andy. Andy was the first person to see Chucky, like, be Chucky, and as a result he could transfer his soul into Andy, but Andy only. And it's the same with that kid in Child's Play 3. In this film, Chucky says that the only way to transfer one's soul is to basically use the Heart Dambula, which he had around his neck by the time that he was shot dead. I mean, if you've actually seen the first film, you know that he's not wearing any fucking amulet, but you know. So there's an inconsistency right there. But obviously the major inconsistency is, if he needed the Heart Dambula all this time to just transfer his soul into anyone, why did he bother in Child's Play 2 to hunt down Andy and only Andy? And in Child's Play 3, why did he hunt down the kid? You know, it's like they've made something up just to give the story a plot, and I can understand why they have it, because obviously it's for plot, but it needed to be explained more. Like, it really needed a bit more detail. Like, even if it was just a line saying, you know, I can't transfer my soul now because you were the first person to see me alive, or the, God damn it, the boyfriend, or supposed boyfriend of Tiffany at the beginning of the film, the Marilyn Manson lookalike, I forgot his name, the Marilyn Manson lookalike at the beginning of the film. You know, if Chucky's just said something like, oh, well, I can't just transfer my soul now because he's dead, or you were the first person that saw me, so we need to use an alternative method. Why not use the Heart Dambula? It's a artifact that allows us to transfer our soul into anyone. But they don't say that, they don't ever mention it, they just say, oh, it's the only way now. Which, I don't know, I feel like they could have done a bit more with that, they could have just given a brief explanation. One of the other negatives, which is a negative in pretty much every single Chucky film, including the remake, which, speaking about the remake, briefly talking about the remake, I do regret giving it a 7 out of 10, because, you know, the more I thought about it, the more I started to hate it more. So, yeah. Nonetheless, Chucky has always had a problem with human characters, and the first film for me is the best because all the human characters were likable. You know, Detective Norris was likable, Andy's mother was likable, Andy was likable. Child's Play 2 also had Kyle, which was very likable as well as Andy. But at the same time, every other character you just couldn't care about at all. Child's Play 3, once again, couldn't give two tosses about any of the characters in that film. You know, whether it be the love interest with no chemistry, or the annoying little brat who wouldn't shut up and is so incredibly annoyingly stupid that I just wanted to pop into Chucky and just cut his fucking head off, to be fair. And this film, my god, I don't think there's a single human character that I ever cared about. Like, the closest I cared about was, aside from the Marilyn Manson lookalike boyfriend of Tiffany at the beginning, I'm awful at remembering names. There's also the gay best friend to Jesse and Jade, the gay best friend. They are like the only two characters I ever cared about because they were likable in the sense that they were sort of just going around being goofy. And this film has some major issues when it comes to just in general when it comes to human characters, because Jesse and Jade I could not care less about. I mean, I understand their story, but I really couldn't care at all about them. I couldn't care if, you know, one of them were to die halfway through doing the film, because they're just so dull. You know, her uncle is just a stereotypical evil uncle. You know, the Needle Nose is just a stereotypical corrupt cop. I mean, I'm glad those two get killed in pretty creative ways, don't get me wrong. But, and plus they get killed quite early on, so that's extra points. So I'm presuming they knew how evil these characters were, but they're just not likable. You know, I can see why the film, this is probably the first film in the whole series that concentrates more on the dolls than it does the humans. And I can see why, because the dolls are more interesting than the humans. I mean, I guess you could argue Tiffany is the only likeable human character in the film, because she was human in the first half, and, you know, Tiffany is just a great, great character. But, yes. But even, like, side characters, because you have these, this couple who are basically con artists, who are trying to scam people and all that, and steal their items, what have you. They invade the motel room which Jesse and Jade are in, and though they're in it for a very short time, they're just stereotypes, basically. They're just stereotypical assholes, basically, you know. And I just couldn't care less. I don't think I can care less for any of the characters other than, you know, maybe the two human characters I mentioned already, and obviously Chucky and Tiffany are the only great characters in this film that you just love. And I guess one could argue, well, the humour can get awkward. The humour can get awkward at some occasions. Like, although my problem with the humour comes more or less from the last third of the film than it does the first two thirds, because the first two thirds actually do a good job with the humour, but the last third is where the humour sort of gets a little bit iffy for me personally. But nonetheless, I quite enjoyed this movie. You know, I know a lot of people have mixed feelings in the film, and it is certainly the most, like, mixed of the Chucky films. People have, like, a 50-50 split over it. I, for one, really enjoy this film. I think it is a enjoyable movie. I think it's helped by the fact that it was released during, like, the mid-late 90s, which, if you've seen any 90s movie, you know that, or even early 2000 movie, you know that they do a great job with two aspects. A, visuals, B, music. And this movie certainly has some of the best music. You know, from Rob Zombie's Living Dead Girl at the beginning, which is just brilliant. I believe Power Man 5000's Son of X5, I believe, is the ending credit song. So, you know, it's got some brilliant tunes, and even like the instrumental tunes, like Chucky and Tiffany's theme, it's just so gorgeous to listen to. Visuals, obviously, I mentioned. Being in the 90s, obviously the visuals are just going to be outstanding. Like, I don't know why the 90s had such great visuals, but they did. And, like, from the bluish sort of night sky lighting to the warm sort of orange golden light colours used, you know, during the daytime. And even the costume designs, sets and all that, everything looks so gorgeous, so eye-catching. Like, you know, even like simple things like the outside of Tiffany's trailer. You know, you could always spend hours, perhaps, just analysing the entire frame, because everything the set design has in this movie is probably my favourite of all the Chucky films. The set design is just beautiful, and the colour and the lighting is just gorgeous. And the costume design is also pretty well done as well. I think this certainly has some of the best in that terms of technical aspects. Now, as a parody of the Chucky franchise, it does an alright job. You know, it does have some funny lines, like obviously Tiffany mocks Chucky for having a knife basically glued to his hand. You know, why doesn't he just kill people more creatively? Although, if you've actually seen the other Chucky films, you know that he does use creative kills, so that sort of backfires. But like, Tiffany and Chucky, those two are the obviously the golden stars of the movie, you know. They have such great chemistry together. I mean, you know it's a love-hate relationship. Ugh. You know, Chucky is obviously a psychopathic, chauvinistic, I can do everything myself, you know, sort of guy. And Tiffany is sort of the same. She's a feminist, she believes she's an independent, strong woman, and, you know, all that. And those two being together is like, it's not going to end well. You know it's not going to end well. But you can't help but love the two when they interact with each other. You can't help but love the dialogue they have with each other. You know, they're just sitting there quietly in the van, you know, watching the chaos outside unfold, and they're debating about, like, how should we kill this guy? How should we do this? So yeah, like, Tiffany is such a great character to introduce as well, you know. Jennifer Tilly is just an amazing actress. I love her. You know, she has, you know, she actually embodies Tiffany really well. Like, you know, as a human character, she, you know, she's got the looks, and as obviously the doll and the human character, she's got the perfect voice. You know, I can't picture anyone being Tiffany other than Jennifer Tilly. She is just such a perfect choice, and obviously Bride of Chucky interacting with her is just, it's great. You know, I really do enjoy the fact that these two really do go at each other, but at the same time, you know that they have some resemblance of care for each other. You know, Chucky wants to see Tiffany be a bit more, you know, out there instead of just sitting back and telling him what to do. He actually wants her to do something, and she wants him to be, you know, a bit more caring, I guess, a bit more, you know, lovable. But of course, it's never going to happen because the two are just polar opposites, yet they're also attracted to each other. You know, they're like the Joker and Harley Quinn, you know, before the Joker and Harley Quinn ever became a thing. Actually, come to think about it, I think Joker and Harley Quinn were before this film, because animated series was 92, I think, or 93. Scratch that. But the first, like, Joker and Harley Quinn in live action, I guess you could argue, and ironically so, more accurate than the Suicide Squad version, because they really are polar opposites, but they're both incredibly dangerous and will kill each other. You know, and I think that's where most of the best humour comes from, is from those two, because they are so good to each other. They're so great with each other. Obviously, the film is very mixed among the Chucky fans. Like, there's a lot of people that love it. Obviously, I'm one of those that really love this film. But then there's a lot of people who really dislike it, and I can understand why they dislike it, because it is different. You know, it's a bit like Star Wars. You know, you've got the people who like the classics, but hate the prequels and hate the sequels. You got the people who like the prequels and the classics and hate the sequels. You got the people who like all three. You know, it's a bit like Star Wars, arguably. You know, you got people who just like this, like, set of films, or like this set of films, and blah blah blah. And it's the same with the Chucky franchise, more or less. There are people who love the horror, and then there's people who love the comedy horror, and then there's people who love both. And I prefer both. You know, I think of all the comedy horrors Chucky's done, I think this one might just be the best of three. You know, Cult of Chucky, when it comes to comedy horror, it was awkward because it sets itself up as a serious film and then also just gets really goofy all of a sudden. And then you know, Seed of Chucky is just a cartoon, basically. But this one for me is a perfect blend of it. Yeah, it's probably more comical than horror, but it's a perfect blend. You know, it's still got the horror aspects, it's still got the comedy aspects. It's like Evil Dead 2, you know, it's got it in the middle. It's not too far Evil Dead 3 or too far Evil Dead 1. You know, it's Evil Dead 2 levels of comedy horror, so the perfect balance of the two. And yeah, I really enjoy Bride of Chucky. I know it's mixed, I know a lot of people have, you know, thoughts and opinions of it. And I don't really want to, like, assume things, but I think a lot of the reasons why people dislike Bride of Chucky is down to the fact that Seed of Chucky happens afterwards. And if you've... Like, the thing is, Bride of Chucky was really loved when it was initially released. Loads of people loved it. It got good reviews, or mixed to good reviews. And, it revived Chucky, But Seed of Chucky would come out later along the line. And I feel because of the fact that Seed of Chucky basically became the Batman and Robin of the Chucky franchise, it sort of ruined the reputation of this one, because now people are judging this one and Seed of Chucky as the same thing, basically. And I'd argue it isn't, and we'll get to Seed of Chucky when we get there, because, but, nonetheless, when it comes to Bride of Chucky, it is a very enjoyable film. It's got perfect horror and comedy in it, it's got, some good laughs, and Chucky and Tiffany are just a gold mine in the film. It's one of the best in terms of visuals and set design and even costume design. It's got some brilliant music, and the negatives I have are mainly down to characters and plot holes. So, I totally recommend it. I mean, if you're a fan of the horror, Chucky horrors, you might not like it, but you might like it. See you when we talk about Seed of Chucky, which is probably gonna be released like in 5 years' time. Oh boy, that one's gonna be fun.